guys, I'm Mike and this is F1 Fanatics. Welcome back to the review of testing week 2. We've now obviously come to the end of all 6 days of testing, and last week obviously we did a review of week 1, so now it will be a quick review of week 2 and then a look of testing overall, just in a little bit more detail. Hopefully you guys enjoy that, and yeah, I'll give my thoughts ahead of obviously the season just barely 2 weeks away. I think it might be 2 weeks tomorrow away for the rates and nights out at Melbourne. Before we get started though, I want to give a massive thank you to Sean from the F1 Words. Invited me onto the live stream. He did all 6 days of live streaming at testing over the 6 days, and me and Jordan were on the afternoon of the Thursday there. So Jordan from the F1 Debate Show, and obviously we know Jordan and Lyle quite well now, so that was really fun and really enjoyable. But it was a really kind of great opportunity and really enjoyed that, so thank you, Sean, if you're watching this. But now guys, let's get into testing and having a look. There wasn't too much eventful over the course of days, they were just kind of more problematic. So what I'm going to quickly do for this one, we're just going to go through the lap times from each day and who topped, and then we're going to go and look in a little bit more detail in terms of the number of laps all the teams have done, number of kind of laps the top 6 drivers did from there, and also the times and what kind of the tyres that each driver did their fastest time on over the course of the 6 days. But starting on Wednesday, we have the timings. I'm just going to put them up on screen for you now. So on Wednesday, Robert Kubica topped the timings for Alfa Romeo with a 1:16.9. Max Verstappen in Red Bull 1:17.3, Sergio Perez 1:17.4, Daniel Kvyat 1:17.4, Pierre Gasly 1:17.5, Alexander Albon a 1:17.5, Lewis Hamilton a 1:17.5, Lance Stroll a 1:17.7, Valtteri Bottas a 1:18.1, Sebastian Vettel 1:18.1, Daniel Ricciardo a 1:18.2, Carlos Sainz a 1:18.2, Charles Leclerc a 1:18.2, Nicholas Latifi a 1:18.3, George Russell a 1:18.5, Romain Grosjean a 1:18.6, Lando Norris a 1:18.8, Kimi Raikkonen a 1:19.5, and Esteban Ocon with a 1:21.5. So the only drivers who didn't go out on the Wednesday were Kevin Magnussen in the Haas and Antonio Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo, because obviously Robert Kubica was driving for them there. So yeah, Wednesday was an interesting one. Obviously it's very interesting. Alfa Romeo managed to top the timesheets in 2 of the days. Last Thursday with Kimi Raikkonen and on Wednesday with Robert Kubica. But we now move on to Thursday, and so the Thursday timings are Sebastian Vettel topped and Ferrari topped for the first time with a 1:16.8. Pierre Gasly had a 1:17.0, Lance Stroll a 1:17.1, Nicholas Latifi a 1:17.3, Lando Norris a 1:17.5, Max Verstappen a 1:17.7, Valtteri Bottas a 1:17.9, Esteban Ocon a 1:18, Kevin Magnussen a 1:18, Alexander Albon a 1:18.3, Daniel Ricciardo a 1:18.3, Antonio Giovinazzi a 1:19.6, and Lewis Hamilton a 1:22.4. Now probably on the Thursday, the big but there was a bit of rain in the morning which caused some difficult running. Antonio Giovinazzi spun out, and I believe Ocon spun out earlier as well, but Giovinazzi damaged his rear wing, and actually when he drove back on, the kind of rear wing kind of disintegrated. And it was actually the first day and only day of testing when things didn't quite go Mercedes' way, because Lewis Hamilton in the afternoon quite early on had to pull over because it believed it was an engine issue and power unit that he had a problem with there. So he then only managed to do 14 laps there, but not great for Mercedes. But I don't think they're going to be too bothered having 1 out of 6 going necessarily too wrong. But Lewis Hamilton has come out since then and said he is a little bit worried about the power unit reliability going into Australia. And obviously in the second half of the season, that Mercedes power unit across its customers and the main team, Valtteri Bottas, Kubica and Sergio Perez, I believe all experienced kind of engine issues in that second half of the season. So yeah, will be interesting. Is there a slight kink in Mercedes armour? I doubt it, but we'll definitely see. There's certainly a team that I imagine would fix any issues before Australia. Now we move on to the last day's timings. Here we go, up on screen for you now. So Valtteri Bottas topped with a 1:16.1 for the last day of testing. Max Verstappen a 1:16.2, Daniel Ricciardo a 1:16.2, Charles Leclerc a 1:16.3, Lewis Hamilton a 1:16.4, Esteban Ocon a 1:16.4, Sergio Perez a 1:16.6, Carlos Sainz a 1:16.8, George Russell a 1:16.8, Daniel Kvyat a 1:16.9, Roman Grosjean a 1:17.0, Kimi Räikkönen a 1:17.4, Kevin Magnussen a 1:17.4 and Alex Albon a 1:17.8. Then Friday I think was a little bit uneventful. It was the tease over these last 3 days. Would we see a kind of headline time? Would we see a time that you go, wow, that was really quick? And maybe there were a few kind of times in there that were very interesting, but yeah, it certainly was something that kind of teams were holding their cards close to their chest. So again, with testing, you can never really take anything and make firm conclusions of what's going to happen in the season to come, because everything kind of unfolds, and Formula One is a massively unpredictable sport. You don't really know what would happen. But what we're going to look at now is we're going to look at the times, the best times and tyres that they set those on for the drivers over the course of 3 days. Then we're going to look at the laps for the teams and the laps for the drivers before I round off with kind of going my things that I think we can take a look at testing and go, you know what, I think we can make a conclusion that that has improved, or you know, they might be worrying a little bit. But yeah, here we go with the fastest times of the drivers up on screen for you now. So Valtteri Bottas in the Mercedes with a C5 compound did the quickest time overall in testing. He did that in week 1 of testing, and that was a 1:15.7. Max Verstappen was the second quickest with the Red Bull. He did his time on a C4, which is a slightly harder compound than the softer C5. That is a 1:16.2. Ricciardo in a Renault with the C5 did a 1:16.2. Charles Leclerc in the Ferrari, a C5, a 1:16.3. Lewis Hamilton's quickest time over the course of testing was a 1:16.4 on the C5. Ocon in his Renault did a 1:16.4 in the C5. Sergio Perez in the Racing Point, a 1:16.6. Carlos Sainz with McLaren he did his on a C4, a 1:16.8. Sebastian Vettel, C5, a 1:16.8 that he did to top the testing on the Thursday. Russell in the Williams, a 1:16.8 on the C5s. Kvyat and AlphaTauri, he did his on a C4 with a 1:16.9. Kubica's Alfa Romeo did his quickest time on a C5 with a 1:16.9. Grosjean with the Haas on the C4s did a 1:17.0. Gasly on the AlphaTauri did a 1:17.0. Raikkonen in the Alfa Romeo did on the C5 compound a 1:17.0. Lance Stroll in the Racing Point on a C3 with a 1:17.1. That's a pretty impressive time, because that is the softest of the medium tyres, but still pretty impressive being up there. Nicholas Latifi in the Williams did a 1:17.3 on the C5s. Giovinazzi in the Alfa Romeo 1:17.4 on the C5s. Magnussen on the C4, the harder of the soft compounds, did a 1:17.4. Albon's quickest time over the 2 test weeks came on the C2s with a 1:17.5. That's a pretty impressive time. And Norris in the McLaren, his quickest was on the C3. The softest of the medium compound was a 1:17.5. Again, I'm not entirely sure how much we can kind of take from these times. I think the 1:15.7 in the Mercedes actually is a really pretty impressive time. I think that one is one to take a note of. Probably Lance Stroll's on the C3s as well is also a time to take note of, because obviously a lot of people were thinking that Racing Point might actually challenge. I don't think it will challenge, you know, the top 3, but I certainly feel it can be challenging for best of the rest. We'll see whether it does over the course of a season, but it certainly does have a very good platform to build on. And also underline, I think Red Bull's pace is pretty good, considering Max Verstappen's time was on the C2, which was the harder of the soft compounds, and Alex Albon's time on the C2s, which obviously is the softest of the hard compounds, wasn't actually too bad a time either. So yeah, very interesting. Keep an eye on Red Bull, I reckon. But now I'm just going to give you a run through of the total number of laps that the teams did over the course of the 2 test weeks. So Mercedes over the course of the 6 days did 903 total laps, absolutely smashed that, almost 1,000 laps over the 6 days. That is incredible. Ferrari with 844 laps, McLaren 802 laps, and McLaren are probably a team to note because I think we mentioned it on the Thursday during the live stream. I think they're a team that haven't really had any issues over the course of the 6 days, so that looks very promising for the McLaren. Racing Point 782, Red Bull close to them with 780, AlphaTauri 769, Renault 743, and a lot of laps for Williams considering that they missed the first couple of days of testing last year. So 737, a mightily impressive effort for them. Alfa Romeo 735 and Haas 649. Probably a little bit worrying for the most there. And then just quickly moving on to the drivers who did the most laps. So Hamilton did the most laps with 466. Carlos Sainz did 446 over the course of the 2 weeks. Charles Leclerc 442, Perez 441, Bottas 437, and Verstappen 414s. So really interesting seeing Sainz and Perez both up there. And then obviously the 2 Mercedes drivers, with the amount of laps they did, were expected to be up there as well. So testing, in a roundup overall, I think it's been a really generally positive one in terms of the reliability hasn't been too bad. In the first week we didn't really have many red flags at all, but there seemed to be a hell of a lot of red flags in the second week of testing, especially on the Wednesday. I think there was a lot of kind of red flags over the course of that day. What can we take? Probably Mercedes are going to be strong. Did we expect them to be weak this year? I don't think so. I think people probably hope that they might drop off, but with the rules and regulations being the same as they were, and considering they dominated last year, realistically they always were going to. And a team to watch out, and I think who had genuinely improved, Racing Point. I think they certainly will be, especially the early part of the season. I think from testing we can pretty much say that Racing Point will be a very competitive outfit this season and probably competing for best of the rest. With McLaren having no issues, I think they had a very strong testing, and you know, they're playing expectations down. They've learnt their game. They're not going to try and kind of build their expectations up too much, but I think McLaren really impressive over the course of the days. And you know what? My standout heroes of testing has to be Williams. Massive amount of laps compared to obviously what they had been doing. George Russell was putting in some very competitive times himself. Very interesting to see, and I think we don't know because of how other teams might have been playing their cards close to their chest, and Williams might have been showing off a little bit more than them. But I think Williams will be closer and maybe even competitive in the midfield this year from what we've seen from testing. But the classic catchphrase that you will hear from the Sky commentary, that you would have heard from anyone commentating on this kind of testing on YouTube, it is, it's only testing. So we cannot draw any conclusive evidence from it, but it got us excited. We got to see the cars on track for the first time this season. We got to see how they're doing. We got to see Das. Obviously that was a highlight of it, you know, that technical innovation. It probably won't be a defining feature in the championship race, but it was cool and it got us talking about it. It's something really interesting that Mercedes brought to the party. The Racing Point kind of looking very similar to the W10 Mercedes of last year. You know, there were lots of kind of talking points. Now, a couple Alfa Romeo topping timesheets on a couple of days. Not that, you know, people were going particularly fast on those days, but it was interesting nonetheless, certainly on that front. But guys, I think it just gets us really excited for Melbourne, and our coverage of the race weekend will be starting how we did all our race coverages from last weekend. So we will do the Thursday, which will be our race preview before the race. Friday we will have an episode of the feeder series, and it actually will be an F3 preview season with Josh Revel. That'll be a fantastic one. I had a lot of fun filming it. I actually just filmed that today on that front. We'll also have the F1 Weekly News Show, where we kind of round up any maybe tech updates we've seen in the garage from there. Also on the Saturday we'll do our qualifying live reaction straight after qualifying, and race live reaction on the 15th after that first race, and hopefully it's an absolutely fantastic one before Monday will be our driver ratings, and Tuesday our full race review podcast. But guys, I hope you're as excited for the season as I am. It feels like, you know, it's within touching distance now. We've got through the winter break, and yeah, absolutely fantastic. And guys, if you're new around here and you've liked the video, don't forget you can subscribe to the channel, click that bell notification, and you can watch more videos like this and be with us and share the 2020 season, and hopefully it's going to be an absolute cracker. And comment down below on what your thoughts were for testing. Who impressed you? What was the main things from testing that you found exciting? Was there anything that you kind of saw that maybe I missed? I'd be happy to kind of see that and debate that in the comments with you. And guys, for now, you F1 fans, keep racing.